So I would like to introduce the first of our 5 contributors today, who is Anna Zlatkis. Anna joins us from Buenos Aires in Argentina. In 1938, her grandmother and great-aunt fled Austria amid persecution from the Nazi regime. This embroidery was made by Rosa and Margarita Lieb during the Holocaust. And I would like to invite Anna to unmute herself and to share with us the story behind this embroidery.
Embroidered by my grandmother or by my grandaunt. They came to Buenos Aires in 1938 because they were Jews and they had to go to Austria, Vienna. Roberta invited me to be part of Conflict Textiles, so I'm very proud of this. And this little embroidered, it is very small. I can show it to you. I have it between 2 glasses because it is very fragile, and I kept it for long years. And now I am very glad to show it to you, and I feel it as a homage to my family and the memory, not to forget what happened, so that it never happened.
Our next contributor is Bernice Steinhardt from Washington, D.C. Bernice is the president of Art of Remembrance, an organization set up by Bernice and her sister to share the legacy of their mother Esther, a Holocaust survivor. Here we have a toy barrel made by Esther in the 1980s, and I would like to invite Bernice to unmute herself and to share with us the story behind the toy barrel.
My mother was a Holocaust survivor who grew up in a little tiny village in the center of Poland. And in 1939, when the Germans invaded Poland, my mother was 12 years old. And they came straight to her village and occupied it for 3 years until October 1942, when they ordered all the Jews of her village and the surrounding area to report to a nearby train station. My mother, who was then 15, refused to go. And she took her 13-year-old sister, Manya, and the 2 of them said goodbye to their family, and they never saw them again. When she was about 50, she decided that she really wanted my sister and me to see her home and her family. She had never been trained as an artist. She didn't know how to draw, but she could sew anything. She had been apprenticed to a dressmaker when she was 8 years old. She went on to create a series of what ultimately became 36 large fabric collage and embroidered pictures with stitched narrative captions that together tell the story of her childhood, her survival during the war, and then her arrival in the United States. She found this barrel, this wooden barrel, and she covered it with, she lined it first with this brightly colored quilted cloth, and then she covered it with this burlap on which she had embroidered these scenes of animals and sort of a menagerie of animals and these brightly colored vines and leaves, and it became this beloved treasure. The significance of all of these to us is the love with which my mother created all of her work. Her artwork, she did really to share her love of her family, the family that she lost, to pass it on to me and my sister, the family that she created, and then to our children. And then these creations that she made for my children, they were all expressions of her love. And that's how we remember her.
So our next contributor is Grant Weatherall from Ballymena in Northern Ireland. Grant is a senior social worker. He is also a qualified expert witness in court and a Makaton sign language instructor. On your screen, you should hopefully see a Star of David pendant, which belonged to Grant's mother. And I would like to invite Grant to unmute himself and to share with us the story behind this pendant. Thank you, Grant.
The Star of David, I hope you can see that on the screen here, which I've got in front of me. is what I remember. In Hebrew, we tend to call that a Mochem David, or a Star of David. It's on my profile page, Jason, as you said. It's what I remember clearly for many years as a child growing up, that my mother always wore this Star of David. I always suspected our family hidden roots, but my mother continued to deny this for many, many years. She said at the time there was a fear that anti-Semitism would return, so decided to bury her identity as a Jewess. So I suppose the question here is, what have I done with my discovery from 38 years ago? I'm just going to list 10 achievements since 1983. I'll just run through them, they're very brief. Setting up 2 charities in London and Ballymena and giving over £50,000 to Jewish Holocaust survivors and persecuted Jews in the Ukraine and the former Soviet Union. Secondly, taking out 2 Arctic lorries of aid to Donetsk and Kiev in the Ukraine. Number 4, learning biblical and modern Hebrew at Queen's University, Belfast. Fifthly, 5 years ago, working with the Northern Ireland Peace 3 initiative, which was bringing about reconciliation with 62 Catholics and Protestants at Auschwitz over a 5-day period. And I must admit, it reduced me to tears on many days, as it did many other people. 60 reconciliation meetings with the son of a German SS Nazi, a Palestinian and a Tunisian Muslim, sadly, who one day wanted to stab me in a church meeting, and just asked for forgiveness and said, I want to know about why you believe in the God that you do. It's a longer story, but I won't go into that. Seventhly, a regular feature columnist writing about the Hebraic roots of Scripture for the Ballymena Times, teaching Catholic and Protestant churches over 30 years to understand their Hebrew roots. Ninthly, speaking twice at the Great Hall in Stormont, where I also sang the Aaronic benediction in Hebrew and blew the shofar. And more importantly, declaring peace to this land of Ireland that has been so kind to me and the Jewish community for over 150 years. 10thly, I'm 2/3 of the way through writing a book called 2 Jews Get 3 Argument. It's a funny saying that we have in Jewish terms. So in honor of my father and mother, I will leave the final quote to Eti Shani. Eti Shani then argues that Joseph can be interpreted as one who gives increase, bearing in mind it was my father that gave me that spiritual name. Eti then goes further. He says Yosef, or Joseph in Hebrew, will take care of the other. He shall feed the hungry in the world. He has the ability to see the other relate to him, whoever he may be, the foreigner, the refugee, the immigrant, the poor, and in closing, one who is special to his father's heart.
Our 4th contributor today is Jurgen Schaeffer, who joins us from Berlin in Germany. Jurgen's mother's family were Jewish, and several of them were killed by the Nazi regime. Many years ago, a group called Ike Camp was formed in his suburban district to investigate the fate of the Jewish inhabitants and to install plaques created by an artist called Günter Demnig since 1992.
My mother never talked to us children about her history until we were adults. This motivated me also to research my family and the historic events of the Nazi Reich. And then in my neighborhood, I found out that in my neighborhood, Klaus Bonhoeffer used to live. He was born in 1901, was one of 7 children of the Bonhoeffer family. Their home of the family is very nearby our house. One brother, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, became a famous theologist of the professing church and was also executed by the Nazi in April 1945. And our neighborhood formed a non-profit organization and also one group within this organization concerned with the history of the Jews in our neighborhood. There were more than 70 Jews who used to live there. Maybe you know of the Stolpersteine, you just saw it on the video, stumbling blocks or stumbling stones that an artist named Günter Demnig started in the 90s. And there are more than 75 thousands of these memorial stones all over Europe. They were kept in a jail in Berlin, taken out during the night, and were shot. I decided then to place stumbling block, even though Klaus Bonhoeffer was not Jewish. Gunter Demnig, the artist, laid it personally, came to Berlin and laid it personally in June 2015. I said a few words, and then we met in the parents' house of the Bonhoeffers and had a memorial hour with music and speakers and many visitors. That was very good. I want to keep in memory the history of these people who died under terrible circumstances. And also, I think for our society today, it is so important not to forget what has happened, and so that it will never happen again.
Our final contributor this afternoon is Marjorie Augustine, who joins us from Chile. Marjorie is a descendant of Austrian Jews from Vienna. Her grandfather immigrated to Chile, bringing his mother and brother from Vienna in 1938. The legacy of her family has inspired her to engage in social justice and to write about the dignity of people through poetry. Marjorie today is an award-winning author and poet and professor of Spanish at Wellesley College. The image on your screen is of a personal diary written by Marjorie's grandfather in the language of Spanish. I would like to invite Marjorie at this stage to unmute herself and to share with us the story behind the diary.
I didn't know I was going to be a poet or a writer, but maybe my grandfather did. When we left Chile in the mid-70s, he gave me the notebook that you have seen in the image. And I've had it with me all of my life since the early 70s. And I always carry it and put it in my desk. But thanks to Roberta, I actually began to read this diary that I hadn't done for many, many years. And the good thing about growing older, that you understand more about the frailty of life and the frailty of time.